Lee Marsh asks a question about MythBusters. He says, can you talk about the first couple of seasons of MythBusters and how much the behind-the-scenes work you had to do before the show got big? Lee, your question has a myth in it, and I'm going to bust it right now. The myth is that Jamie and I did all this hard work to put the show together, and then the show got big, and then we got to stop doing that hard work. That's not really true. The level of physical labor from us remained the same. And we bust everything you saw us build. So I want to go back to when one of the most surprising things to us on MythBusters was we took such pains to show us making the stuff that we were working on. And then within a year, when people started to visit the set, they'd be like, where's the team that builds everything for y'all? And we'd be like, there is no team, it's us. Same thing happened to Cary Grant and Tori. People thought that there was like bunches of people behind the scenes putting things together. Not to say we did not have people building stuff behind the scenes, but there was no shift. There was no shift where we did less work. There was a shift where we brought in some people to do other work so our work could be augmented. So that our work could be augmented. But we were building daily, every day of making that show. Yeah, that's really true. Okay, let's see here. Chris Baginski says, I'm looking to introduce my 1.5-year-old son to my creative passions. I'm assuming once they get a little older. But sure. Dump all your passions on them at any age. I totally agree with that. Such as building with Lego and action figure photography. I love this. I'd love your thoughts on how I should approach introducing my collections to ensure I'm not overwhelming him or forcing something on him. The best way to not force something on a child is to not force something on a child. I grew up in a very permissive household where creativity was encouraged and not judged. I found that atmosphere incredibly inspiring for thinking about making stuff and then making stuff, which is my primary output in the world. I don't think my parents were like structured at all in their thinking of like, we're going to raise some artists. But they did have as a value that like what I was interested in was interesting. Like, it doesn't matter that it's a kid, you know, they took it seriously. I remember one time I had this piece of clay I was obsessed with, and I had sort of molded it into a ball, and I'd made it into this Jimmy Durante style nose, this big schnoz, and it was making my family laugh by going, ha-cha-cha-cha-cha. I was like 8 years old. I was that kind of kid. And I had the nose, and my dad took this nose, and he was like, oh, you know, it'd be great. And he took it, and he then started to mold it. And I was like, what are you doing? I got so mad. And he was like, I'm so sorry. And that is a really important interaction. I had a thing. My dad thought it was just one part of an exploration, but for me, it had become a thing that I had connected to. And so when he started to mold it, I freaked out. And he respected that. That told me that the thing that I was paying attention to was worth paying attention to. This means you're going to buy all sorts of things for your kid, or buy or obtain or borrow or trade, whatever, all sorts of things for your kid that they will never touch. Drum sets, model kits, that puzzle gift from Aunt so-and-so. And what they do gravitate towards will surprise you, but let them gravitate. That's really my best piece of advice. Oh, okay, I wrote some things down. 1 million musicians have not happened in the world because a parent was like, you're out of tune. Just shut up about what they're doing. They don't need that kind of feedback. Also, look, I have met people who grew up in not only not permissive households, but in actively like verbally abusive households. You're dumb. You're not smart. You don't know how to do what you do. And those are terrible things for a child to hear. But I also think that it's not great for a child to hear what kind of person the parent thinks they are. Because as children, we're so like, we see all these people around us, and when someone tells us, oh, you're this kind of person, we just take that in. We're way too porous for those kind of statements. So positively and negatively, be careful about the you're this kind of person statements to the kids. Oh, also, when you feel like your kid is spending too much time playing video games, and maybe it's rotting his skull, remember that people worried this about books at several times in history. There is a graffito in Pompeii complaining about the lazy brains of kids these days. So, like, the video games aren't going to rot their head. They're going to find themselves in whatever they can't stop thinking about. And our job as parents, I viewed my job as a parent to make sure they don't hurt themselves and let them do whatever else, really. Silver Defender says, in a previous stream, you mentioned the time when Thing 2 got caught out by security cameras not walking the dogs. Was there a moment you had to admit to your parents that you messed up? Yeah, totally. I remember it really, really clearly. So I was in Little League, like every kid in the 70s. And consequently, there was like a baseball bat and a glove somewhere around the house for my entire childhood. And like any kid, I was interested in all sorts of sport balls, racquetballs, basketballs, whatever you name it. Spheres are interesting. And one day, I had the baseball bat, and I had a golf ball. And I was like, this might be good. And I went out to the front of my house, and I tossed up the golf ball, and I felt like I put it into orbit. I can't tell you how good that felt. The crack of a golf ball off a baseball bat. Before any of you go out and try this, please think about how far it's going to go and think of the windows in your way, and then don't do it. Like, just don't. Just don't. Because I was so excited. When I was a kid, the Christopher Reeve Superman came out. What is it, 77, 78? Yeah, I'm like 9 years old. And there's this great moment in it when he's a teenager and he's mad and he kicks a football. The football just goes into orbit. It's like, that's what the golf ball did for me with that baseball bat. And I was so excited about it, I went looking for another golf ball, which I could not find. I could not find another golf ball, nor was I ever going to find the golf ball that I hit, because it went at least twice as high as my house, which means it probably bounced a block over. I shudder to think. Suburbs are dangerous, man. I did not find another golf ball, but I did find a lacrosse ball. Hard rubber with metal in its core. And I took that and I tossed it up and I cracked it with a baseball bat, and it went right through my parents' bathroom window. Like, what was I thinking? And it made this perfect lacrosse ball size round hole in the window when it did. So I instantly ascertained that there was no not taking the blame for this problem. And so I ran inside and I ran towards the problem. I ran to my parents and was like, I'm so sorry. I had the lacrosse ball and it went through and they were like, what's going on? And then I took them to the bathroom and I showed them the problem. But since I was the reveal, they were like, it's cool, bud. That's all right. You don't have to be so upset. Everything's cool. And I was all like, did I just unlock like one of the whole secrets to the universe? Reader, I think that is one of the secrets to the universe. I remember specifically, and I've said this on the channel before, one of my most important phrases is, my bad, I'm sorry, I effed up. And Thing 2 at one point was like dissembling his blame. And I said that phrase, and he's like, I get it. And I'm like, no, I want you to say it. I want you to practice feeling those words come through your lips. I'm sorry, my bad, I effed up. Those are really important words to be able to speak. And I learned at that moment. Speak them, and the blame will be less than if you try to avoid the problem. That has me running towards the problems now instead of running away from the problems. Oh, I like this. When people watch me adjust my tools and are wondering if I'm messing them up, I really love that. Clanreignfire says, I was watching your video about prototyping machine labels and you were tramming your vise to the mill. And you were talking about how you'd gone from one dial indicator to another to get honed in. Yes, I was going from a 3-0 indicator to a 5-0 indicator. If you start with a 5-0 indicator, you'll never get anywhere close because you're always going to be outside that indicator's window of operation. So you need to start with a less granular one. Anyway, and he points out, when you were done, you gently but firmly reefed down the bolts that hold the vise in place. My question, after you went to all that effort to get everything as precise as possible, don't you get concerned that the action of snugging up the bolt throws off the final positioning? Yeah, totally. And reefing on a bolt is one of the best ways to throw off your tramming. But I know this machine really well. I've trammed that vise 100 times if I've trammed it once. And before I trammed, I don't know if it's on camera, I wipe down the whole table, I stone it briefly to take down any high spots, I wipe it down again, I wipe down the back of the vise, I stone the back of the vise, then I put the vise flat on the table and I slide it over. I slide it over. It's sliding on metal to metal. This to me is, if I'm reefing on these bolts, they're already mostly reefed at that point. I'm like, you might not have even seen it on camera, but like my main method for trimming the vise is I make both bolts sort of medium tight. And then while moving the indicator across the vise, I'm tapping the vise into compliance. I learned this technique from Tom Lipton and on Oxo Tools, one of the great YouTube channels for making stuff. And so as I'm going, I'm also tightening the bolts a little bit by bit. So that it takes bigger knocks to actually make the adjustments that I'm making, but that also tells me that I'm sliding in. So that final reef, I feel supremely confident about it. And that's just knowing one's tools, really. Thank you for watching. I wanted to talk to you about Tested membership. The Tested members are a key community that we find really, really remarkable. That's very separate from Tested and from YouTube. The Tested members, they buy each other memberships during our live streams. So if you're wondering whether to become a member, watch one of our live streams and someone may just give you one. It is hard to overestimate how much the Tested members actually make possible on this channel. They give us a lot of wiggle room. They give us a huge amount of feedback.
That's a member right now.
Thank you so much for enjoying your membership. Description for everything you need to know. And for all the members out there, thank you, thank you, thank you.